Hi everybody. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a lot of talk about vaccines these days. Vaccines are among the best medical treatments that have ever been invented. I personally have had around 50 jabs or something like that. Last time I had it was about 4 years ago when I traveled to countries in Africa, East and West Africa. I took the vaccine against swine flu in 2009, like a good citizen. And that didn't harm me as far as I can tell. But I'm pretty sure it wasn't necessary, or at least that's my thinking today. The sad thing about the anti-vax bashing in the general debate, I mean, apart from the fact that an overwhelming majority of adults have taken the vaccine, so what's the problem, one can think. But the sad thing, apart from that, is that the bashers, they lump everyone who hasn't taken the jab together as, crazy anti-vaxxers, which of course curbs all possibilities to talk about it. I see in my personal situation five instances where I probably would take the jab. 1, if the disease would have been more dangerous. 2, if I hadn't had the disease about a year ago and thus acquired natural immunity. 3, if I were elderly or belonged to a vulnerable cohort of society of some other kind. 4, if I were in regular contact with vulnerable people like elderly parents. 5, if I had a job where I regularly were in contact with a lot of people. Now, I don't tick any of those 5 boxes. And I would say that the most important point is number 2, my natural immunity. So let's delve a little bit more into that. Intuitively, it felt as if I was home free when I had the disease, And I know that we were many who felt like that. And a few months later, the vaccine rollout started. That was excellent for vulnerable people who weren't already immune, I thought. But soon there was talk of mass vaccination. And I wondered why. It wasn't logical and it didn't feel right. And last summer, some really good scientific data was produced to underpin that feeling. A big Israeli study came out that showed that natural immunity is 13 times better than vaccine immunity at protecting against breakthrough infection, and 27 times better at protecting against symptomatic disease. Now, all the numbers were low, so it doesn't say that vaccines are bad at these things, because there were very few people in these big, but there were tens of thousands of people in the study. Pretty few of them got reinfected at all or got symptoms. But the difference between those who had the natural immunity and those who had only the vaccine immunity was like this. There were other studies that corroborated the general findings, but although a few also were less impressed by natural immunity. But the Israeli one was the cornerstone of this discussion there. And it has been referred to by many experts also in the mainstream. But politicians and major media have been very reluctant to make anything big out of it, which really is a shame, because it's very interesting. And then, a little over a week ago, another big study was published that confirmed what the Israelis had found. And this time, it came from the CDC in the United States, no less. Its conclusions are pretty unambiguous. Unvaccinated with no previous infection, by far, of course, no surprise there, by far run the greatest risk of being hospitalized with COVID. But unvaccinated with previous infection, thus naturally immune, run a lower risk than those who have been vaccinated but haven't had the disease. The difference isn't very big, but it is detectable. Lastly, getting the vaccine after having been naturally infected doesn't seem to increase the level of immunity further. Now, this is also an incredibly interesting study, of course, which by any normal news standards would make it to the front pages, but it doesn't seem as if the news standards are normal these days. It's incredibly frustrating that practically all the mainstream journalists, politicians, and medical authorities, including, of course, those anti-vax bashers mentioned before, talk about vaccinated versus unvaccinated. Only that. Vaccinated versus unvaccinated. Always, in every context. Nobody talks about immunity, which is the only thing that is really important here, isn't it? It's the main goal. It should be the main goal. Immunity. I mean, no matter how you achieve it, by way of the jab or by way of having had the disease. That doesn't mean that you need to seek to get the disease. But I mean, everybody knows that this disease is spreading very, very rapidly. So large chunks of populations all over the world have had it. Now, according to science, if I were to take the vaccine now, one shot would suffice, without doubt, one shot. This I've read in many papers. I mean, probably natural immunity is sufficient, of course, as I've been explaining here, but if I were to take the vaccine, one jab would do the trick, do the job. But that wouldn't give me a vaccine passport. To get a vaccine passport, I need the two, that's required. 2 jabs. So if I take the second shot, I would do it thus for the wrong reason, so to speak. It would be only for me to get a personal perk. And with Omicron, the state of play has changed dramatically, as most of us who follow this know now. We know that vaccination no longer, if it even did before, but probably to some extent, but now vaccination doesn't stop transmission, although it shields from severe disease, severe illness, as does natural immunity. And even authority figures like the Swedish state epidemiologists hint that the point of vaccine passports is quickly diminishing. So I wonder how history will judge governments that, like the Austrian government, that now at this stage, months into the Omicron wave, decide to impose vaccine mandates. To me, it doesn't make any sense at all, to put it mildly. Okay, have a nice week now. Until next time, bye-bye. If you liked this video and other interviews and talks on Mind the Shift, please like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate all the support. And you can follow Mind the Shift on Facebook and Instagram, and you can follow me, Anders Bolling, on all the main social media and also on medium.com. Thank you.